I yield back, and now I recognize Congressman Schneider from the state of Illinois for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Salazar. And let me first say thank you. I'm not on this subcommittee, but I'm pleased to be here and allowing me to join you. I appreciate the opportunity to speak about the fiscal 25 budget priorities that we are here today to discuss. I was just in the region last week. I was in Brazil, Argentina, and Guatemala. The trip was an eye-opener, reinforcing the critical importance of our engagement in Latin America. We had the chance to meet with President Milei and President Arevalo, who both emphasized their appreciation for and commitment to a strong United States relationship. In Buenos Aires, we commemorated the 30th anniversary of the Amia Jewish Center bombing, honoring the victims of this tragic terrorist attack that still has not had justice served. The solemn event reminded us of the enduring threat of anti-Semitism and the need for vigilance and justice. As many of you know, Hezbollah was responsible for the Amia bombing, highlighting the group's capacity for violence and terror beyond the Middle East. This connection is very personal to me, for I have a long history of working to counter Hezbollah's influence, including leading the original Hezbollah International Financing Prevention Act. Hezbollah's activities, including money laundering and drug trafficking, pose a serious threat not only to regional stability in Latin America, but to United States national security. Our experiences on the trip underscored the importance of sustained U.S. engagement in Latin America. Specific priorities protecting our vital interests include addressing and promoting economic opportunities while addressing economic challenges. Dealing with, as was mentioned earlier, the strategic competitors, in particular the PRC. Dealing with the effects of climate change and the threats of irregular migration and other issues that are coming from that. And last but not least, dealing with crime and terrorist groups in the region. We have to address democratic resilience. In Guatemala, we met with the president. He talked about the efforts they're taking, and I'd like to touch on that in a second as well. Economic development, our ties with Brazil are robust. Two-way trade is reaching significant levels. Strengthening that relationship will benefit both nations, promoting job creation and sustainable development. Of course, migration management is an issue, and I'll come back to that in a second, but programs are having effect. In Guatemala, we talked about the fact that border crossings are down by 2/3 since 2021. And last, enhancing our efforts to counter Hezbollah's influence in the Americas is crucial. In conclusion, our engagement in Latin America is not just a matter of foreign policy, it's about building a more secure, prosperous, and democratic hemisphere. And that's what the 2025 budget request is all about, and a step in the right direction. So let me start with Acting Assistant Administrator Camilleri. How is USAID addressing the root causes of migration from Central America, particularly in Guatemala? As I mentioned, we've seen a 2/3 decrease, other positive steps, but what should we be looking for?
Thank you, Congressman. We have seen under the root causes strategy, which was launched in 2021, a new level of attention and resources committed to addressing those root causes of migration from Central America. We've now invested almost $30 billion in that strategy, as well as mobilizing the private sector, as Assistant Secretary Nichols mentioned, to the tune of $5.2 billion in additional investment, 50 companies investing to create jobs in the region. So just to give you some examples of the impact of this work under the root causes strategy, in a single year, USAID helped to create or sustain 90,000 jobs. We reached nearly 500,000 youth through support for primary and secondary education. We kept 175,000 children from growing hungry in the region through our nutrition interventions. The question, obviously, that we often get is, what impact is this work, which is having tangible, meaningful effects on local communities and families, what impact is it having on migration? And there, as you alluded to, I think increasingly we have evidence that we are having an impact. We know, for example, that our workforce development interventions in El Salvador showed a 13% decrease in intentions to migrate. We know that in Honduras, our education interventions kept kids in school, and that those higher retention rates are associated with lower irregular migration rates. And more broadly speaking, as you mentioned, we have seen since the launch of the root causes strategy to today, a 2/3 decline in border encounters from the countries of Northern and Central America. So when we think about the budget environment we're in, and we hear some of the the discussion about potentially significant cuts to USAID budget for the region. We know what that means. That means fewer kids in school. It means more kids going hungry. It means fewer jobs created. It means fewer women and girls protected from gender-based violence. More broadly in the region, less support for public officials and civil society and journalists who are combating corruption and human rights violations. Coastal communities that are more vulnerable to storms and climate change. So, not to mention our the space for transnational criminal organizations and our strategic competitors in the region. So this is tangible. This is real. This really puts on the table the progress that I think we've made over the last few years under the root causes strategy and more broadly in the region, and would just encourage those of you who have the opportunity to consider these questions to think carefully about the impact that we've had so far and the impact we can continue to have appropriately resourced.
Great.
Thank you.
I'm over time. If I had more time, Assistant Secretary Nichols, I would love to talk more another time about efforts to support work in the region to address corruption like what we were hearing in Guatemala with great success. With that, I yield back.
Thank you, Congressman, for your participation. Now I recognize